morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. Extra amazing, Ryan. It's a bro show. The Pound. It's there. That's all people are here for.
Cannot wait for this one.
That's right. All right. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. Man, I don't know how Crystal does this. All right. Ukraine. Let's start with that. We're going to talk a little bit about a very strategic defeat for the Ukrainians in this war, as there's been major developments at the Munich Security Conference. Then our friend Yegor Kotkin will join us live from Moscow to discuss the death of Russian dissident Alexei Navalny, who was found dead in a prison above the Arctic Circle in, let's say, mysterious circumstances. What does this mean for Putin's control of Russia? Why did he decide to kill him now, if that is in fact the result of his death? Fannie Willis has some stunning testimony that will have major impacts on that case against Trump in the state of Georgia, basically confirming a relationship previously with the prosecutor who she hired to go after Trump, and including some possible corruption allegations that she might have gotten herself in some very hot water on the stand. Matt Taibbi out with a new report with Michael Schellenberger about the CIA spying on the Trump campaign. We're going to break some of that down, as well as a bit of a fracas that he's found himself in with Elon Musk over at Twitter. Ryan, you're going to be breaking down for us major developments out of the state of Israel. We're going to be talking about Benjamin Netanyahu's declaration saying there will be no two-state solution, a doctor who you actually personally know who's gone missing, some humanitarian developments, and then we're going to discuss Rashida Tlaib, who is a squad member, representative, Democrat from Michigan, who is urging people not to vote for Joe Biden in that primary. Uncommitted and coming under major attack by the MSNBC liberals. So we've got a big show for everybody today. Before we get to that, though, just want to say thank you all to everybody who signed up for the focus group to be able to help us out. We have major more and developments and plans and all these other things that are coming very, very soon. So if you can help us out, breakingpoints.com. We've got some big stuff that we're ready to debut for all of you, which I'm very, very excited to show. All right, let's go ahead and start with Ukraine. So there's been some major developments out of Ukraine. I did a monologue on Thursday discussing some of the major reasons why I personally oppose aid. And in that, I previewed the Battle of Advika, a very strategic town that has been at the basics of the front line since 2014 and a target of Russian forces, coming under even more attack in the last couple of years of the war. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. Advika, as of yesterday, officially confirmed by the Ukrainians, has fallen to Russian forces. They say, quote, with Ukrainian forces at the risk of encirclement, the top military commander, Siersky, named the Butcher by his own troops, by the way, not by his enemy, says, in startlingly candid accounts, soldier described disarray and despair. Effectively, what they describe, Ryan, is that this city, as I said, which was previously home to some 30,000 people, it's a very strategic strong point for the Ukrainian forces because they have some major bases and other behind the lines, a couple 30 miles or so behind them. It's one of the reasons that they felt very strongly that they needed to defend the city. The fall of the city is kind of becoming a flashpoint for the argument for aid to Ukraine. President Zelensky and Ukrainian advocates of aid are saying that the city fell because of lack of ammunition, specifically artillery ammunition. Opponents of aid pointing out that this is a city where, even with strong reinforcements, supposedly, let's say if artillery ammunition was the sole reason, that it highlights and spotlights the massive manpower and morale problems that they had in this battle, where they were billeted together. People were very fearful that troops were going to be running away, and some of the on-the-ground accounts of many of the soldiers there showing absolute despair, big morale problems in there, as well as Russians with, it appears, have been able to replenish their ranks with volunteers, not with conscripts. And while, yes, they certainly took losses taking the city, that this could be the beginning of a new advance, not just there, but all along the 600-mile front line.
What does it mean for the front line, and what does it mean for the Russian advance that this particular strategic point fell?
Again, not the general, but military analysts that I've seen say that the territory and the terrain behind it is actually much easier for maneuver, that the Ukrainians will find it difficult to be able to pull back and to be able to hold there. If they, as they claim, artillery is the main reason there, then obviously that's a static thing and that's not going to change.
So this was the spot to hold, and that's why they'd been holding it for 10 years.
Well, yeah. So it was a spot to hold for several reasons. It became a political point. It also was kind of a strategic crossroads, as I said, kind of that gateway to the place that we're talking about, the terrain and specifically some of the strategic assets that were placed behind there. Really, the reason why I think the battle at this point is important is this is the spotlight, and this is kind of why we decided to lead the show with This is now the nexus on which all of the arguments around aid to Ukraine are being argued. So President Biden seizing upon the failures on the Ukrainian frontier to blame Republicans, saying it's their fault that this loss happened. Here's what he had to say.
The idea that now, when they're running out of ammunition, we walk away, I find it absurd. I find it unethical. I find it just contrary to everything we are as a country.
So as you can see, Ryan, President Biden, kind of the ongoing line now from Biden, from many of the Democrats, Fox News reporters, supposedly supposed to be neutral, or like, this is unconscionable, this demonstrates why the Ukrainians are losing. I really wanted to focus in on this point because it really is the crux of everything, which is this has now become evidence for why more military aid needs to keep flowing to Ukraine. You also saw this at the Munich Security Conference, where former Secretary Hillary Clinton made her case for aid. Here's what she had to say.
He's absolutely right. I mean, he knows the military situation. I know the political situation. If we actually voted to reflect the majority in Congress, the majority in the United States, we would be sending more help to Ukraine right now. I think in order to fill the gap between now and when we can try to force a vote on the floor of the House, which I think is what's going to have to happen, other countries need to look at their weapon stocks. If they were thinking of sending or selling something to someone else, halt that sale, send it to Ukraine. We've got to keep Ukraine going. And they are running out of ammunition. I was just speaking with some Ukrainian representatives, and their frontline soldiers who have been so brave are literally getting a couple of shells. That's all they're getting, and they need more help.
This was somewhere I really wanted to spend time. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
It's just worth pointing out that earlier, after the counteroffensive showed such success for the Ukrainians, that was used as the rationale for why another $100 billion.
You're speaking about the counteroffensive a year and a half
ago.
Yes, yeah.
So that meant things are going really well. So we need to send more weapons.
All right.
Now they're saying things are going really badly. So therefore, we need to send more weapons.
It's interesting circular logic, isn't it?
And you can imagine if it's stalemated, well, obviously you have to send more weapons because the stalemate will be broken.
You're exactly right.
So I guess we just want to send more weapons.
Yeah, they just want to send more weapons. And one of the things that really bothers me about this is that they're not dealing with reality. The presumption there appears to be that there are secret artillery stocks which are just laying, unused in the West that maybe, we may need for ourselves should we ever get into a conflict, but in production that secretly we can just turn things on. They refuse to deal with reality. I actually went through and read a new report by the Estonian intelligence services. Now, keep in mind, this is complete propaganda pro-Ukraine, but they accidentally did admit a very basic truth, which all of us need to grapple with. Let's put this up there on the screen. I've highlighted the relevant portion, which also includes a graphic. It says, therefore, it is almost certain Western ammunition deliveries to Ukraine in 2024 will not be able to keep pace with supplies available for Russian armed forces. Now, that is a very mild way of saying it, and as you guys can actually see, there was a graph that was right below it, which is a very important one and demonstrates the real futility of the U.S. and Western economies right now. So in 2021, Ryan, Russia produced 400,000 shells. In 2022, in the midst of the war, they were able to increase that to 1 million. 2023, in the span of just a year, they were able to produce 3.5 million shells. They are projected by the Estonians to be able to produce 4.5 million. Now, Ryan, the European Union has had 7 months to promise 1 million shells. So one out of, what do the math there, what is that, 25% or so of the shells that the Russians are going to be able to produce. How many do you think they are actually able to produce despite having 6 to 7 months to be able to run production?
If I had to guess, and does this count ones that they're like secretly buying from Pakistan?
No. This is the ones they're actually able to produce in-house that they were able to give them.
Couple thousand.
Yeah, 500,000. Half a million. So half of the promised amount despite having 7 months to be able to ramp up production. And so basically, it is an industrial reality.
But they are the Mercedes-Benz of shells.
Sure, but here's the other problem, as you just alluded to. Now they're like, well, maybe we need to buy them from somebody else. How do you know they're going to sell them to you? You don't.
Well, and you flip the government.
Also, why should they? Yeah, exactly. The South Koreans, they have a policy in their government. They're like, we don't really want to get involved in this.
Oh, well, then we'll put a new government in there as a new policy.
As we saw previously, we actually bamboozled the South Koreans previously to, in some sort of backdoor deal to send weapons to Ukraine. But this is just a basic facet of industrial production. We cannot come anywhere even close to the Russian industrial production. By the way, that was not supposed to happen. If we go back and read what some of the previous sanctions were saying,
the economy was going to collapse.
It demonstrates to us very clearly that Russia, and I got this wrong too, because all of us underestimated the resilience of fundamentally what Russia and China have as an advantage over us. They have closed systems. They have vertically integrated production, and if they don't have vertically integrated production, they are still able to buy enough from the great powers to do not agree with us on the Ukraine consensus. It demonstrates pretty clearly that you can have the entire West try and flatten your economy with sanctions, but if you have enough production, if you have the will, you can easily get it done. Now, I don't want people to get me wrong. If we converted our economy to total war, yeah, maybe we could,
Sure, yeah, we can easily do that.
Like, do you want to do that? Do you want me to Russian the coffee in my cup, to make sure that the Ukrainians can maybe hold the line in Advika? And I think that's really what it gets to, is that we are at a point now where the reality is that we have exhausted our coffers basically to zero. One of the reasons why President Biden sent cluster munitions to Ukraine was not just because they wanted them, it's because we didn't have any more artillery to send them. And one of the alleged, benefits of the new package is they're like, well, it's all going to flow to U.S., factories and all that. But here's what they don't tell you guys. It would take 18 months for those shells to be able to roll off in significant enough numbers. So at the entire point, we're not dealing with reality. And all of this, even if we were to supply all of this ammunition, et cetera, it would only be able to get Ukraine to not even parity in terms of the number of shells. And in that situation, you actually need more than the enemy if you want to try and do shape. This is, again, from military tacticians and analysts that I've followed. People were actually relatively nonpartisan who are like, they would actually need an advantage to conduct shaping operations and all of that. At best, what you would be arguing for, maybe, is for them to, quote, hold the line. But this belies what? Morale problems, the fact that they're kidnapping old and disabled people off the street. They're basically there to help hold the front line. The situation is hopeless for them. I mean, it's really one of their, they would be lucky if they have the same amount of territory today, even if we were to ship them millions of shells. And then, how many tens of thousands of people would be dead in the meantime of their own citizenry?
And fundamentally, what we're talking about is kind of restructuring the entire West's economy to produce munitions so that this war can just go on forever.
Yes,
exactly. Who does that make sense to?
Thank you.
This is two countries that are fighting over territory between them. Work something out here. This is beyond the capacity of our international rules-based order to sort out. Are you kidding me?
Of course not. All it would take is literally a phone call from President Biden. You can ask Viktor Orban of Hungary. He said that. He goes, look, you guys are the ones who can figure it out.
You guys.
He said this will not be negotiated between Ukraine and Russia. This is going to be between Washington and Moscow. President Putin made that clear in his Tucker interview. Let's find out if he's lying. We don't know. We have no idea. Of course, it was rejected completely out of hand. The reason, again, I'm spending time here is you need to know the reality. There's no secret artillery. There's no secret weapons that are just hanging out there. And if there were, why would we send them to Ukraine? You want to drain us to the zero to send them so that
then when we attack the cartels invade us and they just conquer us.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's not a joke. It's true. It's not even just cartels. I mean, who knows? There's so many different flashpoints across
Canada.
the globe. I would be remiss if I didn't say, if you're a pro-Israel person, the Israelis, guess what ammunition they want? The same ones as the Ukrainians. So
because they want to go to war with Lebanon. Well, and it was funny to see Hillary Clinton say, if you were thinking about selling your weapons to somebody else, like, is she a BDS opponent all of a sudden? She's like,
maybe you're right.
She's like, and Israel watching that being like,
look, this is reality. I mean, and it's sad. It is sad because if you think about it, back in the day in 1991, after the Cold War, we actually produced 800,000 shells, I believe, that year. And last year, I think it was something like 40, maybe 60,000, which is pathetic, and it demonstrates the hollowing out and all of that of the economy. All this has really done is demonstrated to me like how weak and unprepared we are for the fact that we can't even supply to full strength like a third world backwater military, as opposed to
although it is taking on a pretty big country.
Oh yeah, I mean certainly, but
which we seem to forget. It's like The Ukraine is not fighting Poland here.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and that's one of those too, where it's clear that they've significantly underestimated the strength. I mean, you have, as I said, they've got 4.5 million shells. Again, you can ask the Estonians. They're the ones who read the report. In their own report, they say that Russia has largely been able to fill all of its losses with volunteers by just paying them money in the poorest regions of Russia. And a lot of people, including the people who've been killed, the widows and all of that, are like, hey, listen, I miss my husband, but I'm getting paid more than I ever did before, which sounds bleak, but you've never been in poverty. No, I swear. I actually highlighted the same report here. They went and they did some interviews, and it was in like Dagestan or some like the really backwater regions of Russia, and it was like many widows find themselves much richer today as a result of the war because they're making far more in pensions than they ever did in their economy.
Maybe they never liked that guy anyway.
One of the, maybe they didn't like him.
I mean, his children probably miss him. The wife maybe not so much.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Let's put this up there on the screen as well, because you're going to hear this a lot. Continuing from Zelensky, from all of his advocates here in Washington, they say that we are running an artificial deficit of weapons after the Ukrainian withdrawal from Advika. They're trying, again, to make this purely a matter of ammunition. But the truth is that even if they had parity, the best they could do is hold. We can't even get them to parity with current Western industrial production. And that presumes that it would be worth draining our coffers to zero, spinning up all of our economies to total war, just to keep the war going, and they could hold on the front line for what? Nobody ever answers that question.
You would think that after the second counteroffensive, that where we poured as much money as we could find into it, and
$50 billion,
many weapons as we could find into it. The Ukrainians threw thousands of men into it, and it failed.
Yes.
You would think that after that, you'd be like, okay, we tried that. That's not going to work. Now we sit down and we negotiate what the end of this looks like.
But that's not the answer, right?
And instead,
the answer is
like,
just more.
We'll just do more.
Yeah, more and more and more.
With fewer people, you're running out of
and older
people. Yegor, who we're going to have on next, he said it really well. Either they run out of money and ammunition now, or they run out of men in like 2 years.
Yeah. It may even be sooner than that. 650,000 conscript-age Ukrainian men have fled the country, have bribed their way out. They're basically, at this point, if you're like 50 or so, you're up for grabs, to be able to go. The average age of the military is somewhere around 45 to 50 years old. That means that there's a 70-year-old in there. If the average is 50, that means there's a 70-year-old in there. If we think about what a normal distribution looks like. So let's just consider, where really things are going. And, even if you gave them, like you said, then it's just going to be a country of boys and old men. And even then, can they really be able to hold on? And this presumes so much more of Western support, which still belies the question of now what.
And that's
so a very, very difficult
that's
situation.
2 years. What about 4?
Yeah.
What about
5,
6?
10. Yeah.
There's no reason that Russia's going to stop unless we come to a negotiated solution to this.
Right. Well, that's what reality is like. It's not pretty, but it is what it is. And it's one of those where a lot of people in the news are just not being honest. They're displaying it purely as some sort of magic artillery problem when there are manifold issues as to the Ukrainians. And in the meantime, they are likely to only lose more territory. The Russians appear to be preparing for a major offensive sometime in March all along the front line, and it will just continue and continue and continue. Will they have major breakthroughs like they did in the early days of the war? No, they don't care, though. They are totally willing to sacrifice as many men as possible. And as we're just about to talk about with Yegor, Putin is actually stronger domestically than ever, which is a good segue. Let's get to Yegor Kotkin. He's joining us live from Moscow to discuss the death of Alexei Navalny.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.